welcome to Girl Geek. My name's Angie Chang, and I'm the founder and CEO of Girl Geek X.
Welcome everyone to the Webflow Girl Geek dinner.
I've been going to Girl Geek for a very long time. I consider myself an OG. I really support the organization. I really love their mission and what they're trying to do, and I really am a sincere supporter.
All right, so before my daughter interrupts us, Jiaona Zhang is next, VP of Product at Webflow.
We fundamentally believe in no code, which is instead of asking people to have to learn how to code or all of these different things in order to create, we want to make it much more visual, much more intuitive, and give you that abstraction layer.
First, we'll go through my journey to become a data engineer, what the job entails, what I've learned about it, the glory or lack thereof in the job, the whys of being a data engineer, some of our secrets so you can take them and use them.
You have to be your biggest advocate, track your progress and wins in a progress doc, try to kick off a promotion process before a manager handoff if you're able to, push for those one-on-one-on-ones, and make your work as visible as possible.
The thing that I think is also interesting is like we were all hired. There was all some spark that people saw in us. There's some potential that we have, and it's up to us whether or not we live up to that potential and lean into it, or we let others define who we are and how we behave.
And also all people that I met through my interview process were just awesome. And at the first retreat, I just understood that these people are my people because they were so kind, so human, so humble, at the same time, so smart and so visionary, focused on our mission. It was just awesome.
Hi, welcome to Girl Geek dinner virtually in a pandemic. This is the Webflow Girl Geek dinner 2022. My name's Angie Chang, and I'm the founder and CEO of Girl Geek X. And this is Sukrita. Hi, Sukrita. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Sukrita, and Angie's partner in crime whenever I can be a good partner to her. Welcome everyone to the Webflow Girl Geek dinner.
Yeah, so I wanted to really quickly say a bit about what Girl Geek is and kind of go back to the beginning where I started Girl Geek dinners in over a decade ago, where I was just really excited to put women on stage at different companies in the San Francisco Bay Area. And now that we are doing this virtually, we can have people join us from around the world. We have people of all genders coming from all cities around California. Normally now we get to have people from all over the world. So thank you so much for coming. And if you want to tell us where you're joining us from in the chat, we would love to see where you're dialing in from. We not only do Girl Geek dinners in person and virtually, we also do an annual virtual conference every International Women's Day. So March 8th, usually we are doing our International Women's Day conference called Elevate, and that's an all-day event with lots of speakers and sponsors talking about what they're working on. So it's like a really all-day Girl Geek dinner where you learn so much, and then you got to meet other women. And you can also, there's a call for speakers. So if you haven't gotten that email, you should look at the girlgeek.io website, and there is a link to apply so you can become a speaker. We had at least 3 speakers, I believe, last year who came in through the submission process. So I encourage you to think about what your expertise is and apply to speak. We are reviewing everything in about a month. So what else is there? Am I forgetting anything else?
No, but I did want to say, given the Elevate conference is our favorite time of year, we absolutely would love you to apply right away. Don't overthink it, just do it. There's a lot of times that we don't see enough female speakers at tech conferences or conferences in general, just because of unconscious bias that we put on ourselves. I feel like sometimes we think it has to be perfect when it doesn't. It just needs to be authentic. So please go ahead and apply.
So I think it's about time to bring on our first speaker. Arquay Harris is going to be telling us a bit about Webflow. I'm really excited to hear her speak about the company. She is the VP of engineering at Webflow, and previously we knew her in a previous life as a Slack director of engineering. And you might recognize her. We kind of always say, oh my God, if someone asks us did someone get hired from a Girl Geek dinner? We're like, yes, Arquay. She got hired at the Slack Girl Geek dinner and has worked there for about 4 years, I believe. And I'm just super happy that you're now at Webflow and you're going to tell us all about it. I heard so much about no code and the growing company. So yeah, I'll pass the baton to you. Welcome, Arquay.
Excellent. And I hope like I'm not the only person who's got hired. I think it's like, oh, I'm in good company of all the people. So first, we're just going to learn almost everything that you wanted to know about Arquay. Consider it your Arquay 101, if you will. But before I get into it, I've been going to Girl Geek for a very long time. I consider myself an OG kind of person. And so I looked at my email and I thought, like, what is the earliest Girl Geek that I ever went to? And I found this ticket from 2009. And it was some company called LOL Apps. Does anyone even know what LOL Apps is? I literally have no idea what that is. I had to go on Wikipedia. I think it's like a Facebook game or something. It no longer exists. But the funniest thing is I know I went to one before 2009, but this is the oldest one I could find in, in Gmail, and all my Yahoo mail has been deleted. So that was pretty funny. I really support the organization. I really love their mission and what they're trying to do. And I really am a sincere supporter of Girl Geek. So really quick, pronounce Arquay. Really sorry to disappoint. It's nothing exotic like an African princess or anything like that. My parents really just liked SEO. I say this a lot and people don't believe me, but it actually is the truth. That's why I'm named Arquay. And I thought a really good introduction would be to talk about my kind of traditional, non-traditional background. And growing up, I really loved math. And as you can see, I one day dreamed of visiting this island nation of Sokotoa. And so I was president of the Math Honor Society, and I really loved math. And I went to college to become a math teacher. And it's because I had pretty humble beginnings. And I really believe that math is like the kind of great equalizer. You can math and science your way out of poverty, so to speak. And so I had an after-school job, though, that really introduced me to things like Photoshop and Illustrator. And so even though I loved math, I noticed that I was most engaged when I was kind of doing this stuff. So then I transferred schools and I studied media arts and design. And I got into coding because I didn't like this process of handing off my designs to someone else. And I thought, I'm really analytical. Like, I learned to code. I have this math background. I can learn to code. And so then I started with Flash and then PHP later, and then Python. And so I later went on to grad school and I did more coding of fine art painting. And so the really interesting thing about me, I would say, is even though I'm a developer and I very much consider myself an engineer, I actually have an MFA. I'm a formerly trained designer, and it's really served me well just in my career and in my life to be able to have these informed conversations about topography and color and understand what can be built. And I like to tell that story because people often say, like, oh, I really want to get into coding and I really want to, like, do this technical thing. I don't know if I can do it. You can do it. We can all do it. I think you don't have, there's no one true direction or path, and everyone's journey is different. And so this is a good transition into what I do all day. I'll tell you a little bit about what I do at Webflow. The thing that I really like about Webflow, especially if you hear my story, is how Webflow is really invested in kind of democratizing this idea of creating things for the web's visual development platform. And I think previously there were these gatekeepers. It was like you had to have a CS degree, and it was only coders and only people who had like done a certain thing could really create these experiences for the web. And I really identify with that mission, as well as the fact that I think it really aligns with my design and kind of artsy background. So it's almost a perfect gig for me. I really dig it. Really quickly, I'm sure you're wondering, VP of engineering, what does this person even do all day? Well, I do this combination of what you might have heard called the 3 Ps, which is people, processes, product. Those are the kind of main things that a VP of engineering does, but the process being like how you actually develop software, people is the mentoring piece, product is the actual strategy of what we're doing. And then I even have my kind of own framework where I really believe in advocating for the people on my team, execution, which is kind of the bread and butter of what engineering managers do. And then these business priorities, because it really matters. Like, you could advocate all day and you can execute all day, but if it doesn't align with the business priorities, then there's probably an issue there. So I just wanted to give you a high level, an intro, setting you up for this talk, telling you a little bit about me and my story. And I'll be here later asking questions in the Q&A if you have any more questions about me or the product or Webflow in general, because we are hiring. We'll be here talking to you about our open roles and all that stuff. And I look forward to talking to all of you and you're in for a great night. I'm a little bit biased, but really it's gonna be good. So yeah, I'm about to hand it off. Okay, so there you go. That's it. I highly recommend you put in puppies in your presentation if you need to take a sip of water. So who's up next?
You're so cool. Oh my God. Yeah, you're one of our favorite girl geeks ever because of every time we're greatly entertained and amazed by what's going on in your career. All right. So before my daughter interrupts us, Jiaona, Zhang is next. Oh my gosh, she's an amazing, amazing, cool person. VP of Product at Webflow. VP of Product at Webflow, and she's also an active angel investor, a lecturer at Stanford University, and a course creator at Reforge. Oh my gosh, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here, and that is so adorable hearing your daughter's voice. All right, I do not have a puppy poster or a segue while I drink water and pull up my slides, so give me 1 second. All righty. Okay, so again, I'm so excited to be here. I lead product at Webflow, and just a little bit of background on me. I started my career actually in consulting, and really wanted to not be advising and actually be on the other side of the table and truly operating. And so I started my career in product by being a product manager at a mobile gaming company. Definitely not something I thought I would do growing up, but it was a really great way for me to get my hands dirty and learn how to ship things. I spent time at Dropbox, at Airbnb, at WeWork, and then ultimately made it to Webflow. And I'm so excited, similar to Arquay, in terms of being able to work on a mission statement that is really about empowering everyone to build. As someone who didn't have a technical background, I was an econ major in school, being able to create tools so that all of us, no matter what your degree was or what you've studied, you can build, and you can actually build for the web. That's just something that I think is so exciting and democratizing. I'm happy to talk about my background a little bit more later in the Q&A, but today I actually wanted to share 5 lessons in product strategy. So first of all, product strategy is something that I think a lot of people scratch their heads at. They're like, what is it exactly? Is it the company strategy? Is there something different? Like, what is strategy? How do I know I have good strategy? And so what I want to walk through today is what I've personally learned over my career in terms of, what strategy is, and also how do you really go about bringing that to life and going through some examples there. So I don't believe in progressive disclosure, so I'm going to go ahead and share the 5 lessons at a high level, and then we will go through each one and talk about it in more detail. So the 5 lessons that I've learned is, first, the most innovative companies start with a really bold mission. And then this concept of your strategy, and we'll talk about what, this thing, it really should look like a pyramid from your mission down to your strategy. The next thing I've really learned is that it's really important to articulate real user value before business value. Lesson 4, you do not have to do it yourself. And then lesson 5 is to bring your product strategy to life, you actually design it into your organization. That's one of the best ways to execute on it. So let's go ahead and get started with each one and talk a little bit more about what each one means. So for the first one, the most innovative companies start with a bold mission statement. We're going to do a little bit of interactive Q&A in the sense that I'm going to ask people to put some stuff in chat. So first of all, I'm curious if people know what Tesla's mission statement is. If you do, take a moment and just go ahead and type it into the chat, and we'll see if anyone does. Anyone has it. Arquay saying, just do it, just do it. It's whatever you think. A lot of people have no idea. Okay, that's really interesting. Ruling the world. Okay. Vroom, vroom. Well, I know SpaceX's is to colonize Mars, so I'm assuming Tesla's is also very grand. Okay, Caroline has bingo. Essentially, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. That's literally exactly what their mission statement is, to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. And the reason why this is meaningful is because when you have a mission statement that is something like this, it enables you to really innovate towards this North Star. Imagine a world where Tesla's mission statement was to build the best electric vehicle, or to build the best luxury car, or to build whatever else, right? Like it would really limit what they do. It would limit the concept of, hey, what we actually should do in order to achieve this mission of transitioning the world to sustainable energy. We should have a vehicle, but we also maybe should have solar panels. We should also have charging stations. Like, how do we get the world to be using sustainable energy much more? And so when you have something that is much broader than what you're currently working on, a mission that is inspiring and really ambitious, it actually creates that room for innovation, and it really allows you to think bigger around how can I achieve that ultimate mission. I'm curious if anyone knows what Airbnb's mission is. How's the world? Share. Okay, it's really interesting. There's a very big difference if it was how's the world versus share. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. To make locals share their experience. Okay, so another thing in the vein of sharing. Okay, sharing community. Something about being at home when you're not at home. So this is actually Airbnb's mission, which is really to create a world where people can belong anywhere. And when you are anchored on belonging as your mission, as your North Star, you're able to think about all the different ways, all the different aspects of a travel experience that you might want to improve in order to achieve belonging. So for example, making sure that, what you feel at home, that is a part of belonging somewhere. Making sure that you're connecting with locals. Tara had the locals and sharing their experience. That's actually part of belonging. Making sure you feel as part of a community. That's also part of belonging. And so again, when you have a mission statement, and that's where you anchor the company and everything that your company does, you are able to think much broader and open up much more room for, if we were to truly achieve this, what can we do? What are the products we can build? What are the programs we have? And so that actually brings me to Webflow, since this is a Webflow and Grow Geek talk. And so here at Webflow, our mission statement is to empower everyone to create for the web. And on top of that, we also really care about making sure that everyone at our company are leading impactful and fulfilling lives while working on this mission statement. And the reason why, so I'll focus more on the first part, which is empowering everyone to create for the web. The reason why this is really important, and to start here as a part of the product strategy, is it is something that we could be working on for the next 100 years, and we will continue to make progress towards this really ambitious mission, getting everyone to be able to engage in the act of creation. And when we do something like that, it also gives us the room to think, okay, to achieve something as ambitious as this, what are the big things we need to do in the short and medium term to ultimately accomplish this journey? And so when you start with a mission, as opposed to we're going to build X, Y, Z, that's our product strategy. When you start with a mission, you really get everyone at your company rallied against this is what it means to ultimately long-term be successful. And these are all the different ways we can innovate towards that, creating much more room for both depth and breadth of what you can do as a company. All right, the second lesson, it should look like a pyramid. And when I say it, I really mean, we just talked about starting with your mission statement, that flowing through to your product strategy should look like a pyramid. And so what does that actually look like when you break it down? The first thing is you have your mission statement. So I gave you a few examples, the Tesla example, the Airbnb example, Webflow example. From there, you actually can go and talk about your vision. If your mission is, what are you ultimately trying to achieve? Your vision is, we believe that if we do this, that is the best way to help us achieve that mission. From there, you actually need to formulate your company strategy. And when you have these North Stars in place, your company strategy will be a lot crisper and focused. And then from there comes your product strategy. And so you can see it's actually this almost like it's this nesting doll, this pyramid structure where everything kind of ladders up into your mission statement that we just talked about. So let's go through Webflow's example. So again, this is our mission statement to empower everyone to create for the web. What is our vision? How do we really achieve that over the next 5, 10, 20 years? We believe that the best way to achieve it is to build the world's most powerful no-code development platform. And every single word in this sentence actually means something really critical to the way we think about how we approach our vision and also our company strategy. So the first word that I'll talk about is this concept of power. We believe that in order to empower everyone to create, especially all the different things that you want to create, we need to give you power. We need to not just give you a template, but real tools, real powerful tools that you can use to customize whatever it is you want to create. We fundamentally believe in no code, which is instead of asking people to have to learn how to code or all of these different things in order to create, we want to make it much more visual, much more intuitive, and give you that abstraction layer. And finally, we really believe that in order for us to actually achieve our mission, which is to empower everyone to create really anything, we can't really do it alone, and we have to build this platform. I'll talk more about that as part of lesson 4, but platformization and really creating that platform is a big piece of what we believe we need to do. And as a result, it ladders into our company strategy, right? So if this is our vision, how do we then pull that into our company strategy of, okay, what we need to do is ultimately to lean into the power, to really, really enable this no-code revolution, and then ultimately create a platform. And then from there, what you actually build, that's the product strategy. And it ladders, it basically hangs off of the company strategy, which hangs off of the vision, which hangs off of the mission. And so our product strategy, what we actually build, what are the features of this no-code platform? What are the ways we can actually bring that power to life? How do we make sure our platform is extensible? That comes from our company strategy. All right, so that was lesson 2. It should look like a pyramid, and now you kind of have a sense of what it is. We're gonna move on to lesson 3, which is it's really critical to articulate your user value before your business value. And imagine a world where Tesla's strategy was, we're going to build the best electrical vehicle. We're going to beat Prius, or we're going to beat whatever X vehicle that other brand has. That's not super inspiring, and it also doesn't ultimately create the best product out there. Imagine if Airbnb was like, we're going to beat Booking.com. We're going to be, even better than, Booking plus Expedia plus VRBO plus everything combined. That's also not something that really gets at, this is what our users need, and this is therefore what we can build to fulfill their needs. And finally, going back to Webflow, imagine a world where what we anchored on was we got to beat WordPress, or we got to beat X thing that's out there that people are using today. It really limits what you're able to do, and it limits your innovation, because really the most creative and innovative companies are building something that is like leagues beyond what is out there in the market today. And so instead, here at Webflow, we really think about the user value first. So we think about something like everyone who watches Pixar movies, you see this just richness of animation and just what you can create on the screen. That was all done via software, so that you don't have to literally create every single person or molecule or snowdrop or Anna's dress pattern, right? Like you actually have software to scale that. And so that is really anchoring on the user value of, how do I build something that's beautiful and delightful for people to watch? And then how do I make it so that every single person who's, for example, working at Pixar can do it scalably and do it in a way that you can actually create a beautiful movie in X years time. And so that's the same way we think about Webflow, which is the value of really getting people to be able to create something that is powerful and ultimately what they're looking to do. And so the way we think about the user value is we want to give people the building blocks. And here's an example of some of the building blocks we've had in the past, just illustrated like as an analogy. And you can take these building blocks and you can actually put them together and create whatever it is that you are looking to do. So, I need something really custom on the UI side, and then I need to add our data layer. I need to add some stuff around the CMS. I need to add, a storefront, like all of these different things I need to add in order to bring my idea to life. We're giving you the tools to do that. And when you anchor on user value, you can actually see where that can go. You can think of a world where, today you can build these particular structures, but what if in the future you can actually build a house, and a really elaborate house at that? And so if that's our anchoring around, this is the user value that we want to generate for our users to be able to go from, literally having to code to being able to put things together and build some of these like really nifty like planes and trains, and then one day to being able to build everything up to something like this house, this beautiful, tailored, polished house. If that's what we believe in, and that's the user value, then that is really our guiding principle, as opposed to chasing down features with competitors that might ultimately not be the thing we want to benchmark against, and usually isn't the thing we want to benchmark against, because competing against, again, for example, WordPress is not going to get us the type of innovation and type of product unlock that we want, as opposed to saying, hey, if we want to be able to enable people to build something like this beautiful house, what would we need to do in order to enable that? All right, lesson 4. Which is you don't have to do it yourself. And I think this is a big lesson for a lot of companies where they have a very ambitious mission, right, and vision. And you look at yourself and you're like, hey, we're a startup. How are we going to achieve that? The answer is, you focus on a very critical core and then extending it and allowing your community to help you get there. And so we really think about this in terms of an ecosystem. So what are the native capabilities that are most important to Webflow? And then how do we actually partner, whether it's with other companies or with a whole community of developers, to enable that long tail of use cases? And what's really interesting, and this actually is almost bringing up lesson 3 in sharp contrast again, is when you do this, when you really think about the user value first, you then automatically unlock the business value. And so in this case, when you think about the user value of, hey, in order to get that beautiful house to be something that people can build, we need to have a partnership with our entire community. That's user value. You ultimately then you unlock the business value naturally, which is, in this case, when you have a community, you really create this wonderful moat against your product, where it's a lot harder to displace you, because so much of your community has these integrations and are deeply embedded in what you provide. And so it actually results in business value naturally when you first focus on user value. And the last lesson is to design your product strategy into your organization. This is the best way to bring your strategy to life and ensure that you're executing on it. The reason for this is because, as you grow as a company, even if you're beyond just like a very small group of people that can, just quickly Slack each other at all times, it's really difficult for anyone outside the people working closest to the problem to really understand the best way to solve that problem. So when you design your org in a way that reflects your product strategy, that reflects the type of investments that you want to make in the user value that you want to unlock, you actually empower the people who are working closest to the problem and on the product to make the right decisions for you. And so here at Webflow, we've really mapped our engineering, product, and design structure to the things that we really believe we need to unlock. So for example, you'll see on here, capabilities. How do we build the best first-party capabilities for our creators? Then how do we also unlock this ecosystem to extend those use cases? How do we then make sure that anyone working on our community, working with our product, they are able to be successful, whether they're collaborating with each other or they're going into larger and larger companies that need much more specific workflows. And then from a growth perspective, end to end, segment by segment, thinking about that life cycle. And then last, but definitely not least, there are the very important foundational investments, infrastructure investments that we need to make sure that everything is able to, come to life, and that these things are interoperable and connected. All right, I know I am pushing on my time. And so with that, thank you so much for listening. Those were the 5 lessons that I personally learned around product strategy that I hold near and dear to my heart. And hopefully that can be helpful to your respective companies.
Thank you, Jay-Z. That was really an excellent product strategy talk. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm going to just really quickly remind everyone that we are taking questions for the speakers in the Q&A. So if you go below, there's a little Q&A button that you should be seeing, and you can ask your question there, or you can ask it in the chat and we'll copy it over. So Olena is a tech lead and staff software engineer at Webflow, and she loves React, functional programming, and nonfiction books, and is currently focusing on creating value between engineering and product. Welcome, Olena.
So hi, I am Olena. I'm very happy to be here today. And as an engineer, I would like to talk a little bit about how we can make code reviews even a better experience for everyone. A little bit about myself before we start. So I am Ukrainian who lives currently in London. For the last 9 years, I am working in the software industry, and half of the time I am with Webflow. Currently, I'm a tech lead and staff software engineer at Webflow. And during my last 4.5 years, I did more than 1,000 pull requests and performed more than 1,000 code reviews. Let's get back to our topic for today. So let's talk a little bit what we can do better in our code reviews. First of all, why I choose actually to talk about code reviews. Why doing better jobs with code reviews actually matters so much. I choose to talk today about this because I believe this is a unique opportunity, as it is a win-win situation for a company, for you, and for your teammates. So when we have code reviews, we have that unique process that can empower both your company, your teammates, and yourself to develop your career, and for your teammates to develop theirs, and at the same time to company to sustainably grow. So typical cycle for pull requests look like something like this. Pull request is ready for a code review, then code review is happening. And then you might think that today at my talk, I will be concentrated mostly on this code review. But actually, interesting thing with code review can start even before code review itself. And one of such things can be self-review. What is self-review? Self-review is when pull request author is going to his or her or them own changes and leaving useful comments for code review body. For example, what these comments can be about. They can provide information why these changes were added to the code base. Or they can provide information where specifically code review body should look for the most important part of the change. What else can happen before the code review and is happening actually every time when we are entering code review process? We are choosing code review body. And let's look how typically this process looks like. For example, we have a team with 3 people, Rose, Mark, and Boris. Rose is a very experienced engineer. She is with the company for a very long time. Mark is with the company also for a long time, but he only recently switched to becoming an engineer. And Boris just joined a few weeks ago, but been in the industry for a very long time. So whom would you choose to be your code review body? Looks like Rose is an obvious choice. But actually, if we look wider on the code review process, we might want to choose Mark or Boris. Why? Because code review can be not only the place where other engineers provide you feedback, but this can be also a place where other engineers can learn from you and from the changes that you introduce to the code base. And if, for example, code review body would be someone like Boris, they can bring fresh perspective on the changes that you introduce into the code base. You can specifically enforce and empower them to see code review as a learning process by reaching to them directly and asking them to specifically ask your questions in the code reviews. Use code reviews as a way to share a general and domain-specific knowledge. So we talked a little bit about choosing code review body. What is happening next? I'm calling a magic moment in code review process. What is happening next is actually code review body reading code for the first time. Why I'm calling this a magic moment? Be with me and listen carefully. Reading this code for the first time is something that you never will be able to do again. You can read this code for the second time, for the third time, for like n time, but never for the first time. Why is this such a unique opportunity and such a unique signal? Because this is a way where you can really evaluate, is this code readable? Is this code obvious? Will be it easy to work with this code? And my advice for you, how to better capture this signal are following. So how to read code for the first time? Take notes. If you are doing code reviews with GitHub, you actually can make a draft of the comments in the code review process. You don't need to share them all in like code review when you submit it, but you can capture this, your first thoughts when you first saw this code. And at this moment, what I am advising to pay attention to, ask yourself a question. How easy code is to understand? Do all variables make sense? Does code organization make sense? Is it obvious actually what code is doing? And remember that this first impression is your invaluable signal. So after our first read, let's deep dive in code review process itself. In many cases, code review process might end up being like request for change. Or if everything like was straightforward, it can be like, look good to me, look good to marriage. But actually, code review can be a great way about sharing feedback about changes that one engineer wants to introduce to the code base. Share this feedback shared from other engineers. This feedback can be like anything. It can be that code review body learned today something, that they found useful something, that something surprised them. How to make this sharing feedback on all the ways, this sharing of the in the code review process be good, is to talk from the place of respect. When I'm code reviewing changes, I trust that the person that did these changes did their best, and no matter where they are in their engineering journey, are they junior, have they been in the industry for 30 years, have they just joined the company or been with the company for 5 years, I believe they did their best and with best intentions. To come up all my this understanding in the code reviews, what I try to do is, if I'm not sure about anything, any change that happened in the changes, I rather ask than state. When I review changes, I remember that I am trying to remember that I'm not reviewing a person, I'm reviewing changes. So I try to avoid using you word anywhere in my code review feedback. And also I'm trying to be as specific as possible. Let's concentrate on this last point a little bit more. So what does it mean to be as specific as possible? Let's look at this one example of the code review comment. It's not the best approach to do this calculation. Yes, it is a feedback, but how can it be better? Maybe something like this. Why the second one is better than the first one? Because it contains why changes are needed, as well as it is generous with example. So the one pull request author will be seeing such code review comment, it will be easier for them to act on it. So make sure that your comments include everything that pull request author might need. We talked a little bit about like that we need to include why we request some changes, examples, but there is one more thing that we would need to include in the code review comments for them to be as specific as possible. Let's look at another example. So this is an example of a code review comment. We have 3 versions of this button in our code base now. We should have only one. Okay, this is a feedback and a piece of information. What it is unclear and unspecified in this code review comment is what actually pull request author should do with this information. So make sure that in your code review comments, it is clear what changes are expected to happen after the code review was submitted. You can use, for example, for this emoji system where by one emoji you can code changes that are requested before a pull request will be good to merge. With other emoji, you can mark what are just a suggestion, and with third one, what are appreciation. In this case, like remember 2 things. First, your teammates should understand what each emoji means. And second one is that this emoji can't be only color coded because you want the system to be accessible. So also make sure that they have different shapes. And also remember to bring some positivity and pride in your code review feedback. It can be in the form of code one of the tips that from one of the engineering manager in the Webflow, that is really nice to place some humor in the general code review feedback. Like here is MM that like in some way is connected to the changes that pull request author introduced. So after the deep dive, what happened next is end of the code review. What can we do at the end of the code review? We already mentioned that we can like place here some positivity, some price, but what else can we do here? I think like in the end of the code review, it might be good also from time to time to connect pull request author to the bigger picture, to the bigger aim to which the changes have contributed. For example, let's see this code review summary. This is really great explanatory documentation. It is a good positive feedback, but how much better is this one? This is really great explanatory documentation. It will be such much easier with it to onboard new engineers. In this code review comment, we are connecting changes with a bigger purpose of this change. That with these changes, it will be now easier to onboard. So I today talked a little bit about like what hidden gems I found in the code review processes during my times at Webflow, but I'm more than sure that between you are many skillable engineers, and you also know much more hidden gems in the code review. Please share them in the chat, and I want you to thank you.
Thank you so much. That was just absolutely insightful and wonderful. Let's see real quick if there are any questions for you. I think there are a few that you can take on the chat. Let's move on to the next speaker. The next speaker is Siobhan. So Siobhan is the lead data engineer at Webflow, getting to work with engineers, scientists, analysts, and everyone else who will talk data with her. That's awesome. She's been a teacher, a mentor, and a workplace culture plus mental health advocate. Some tech topics she loves are functional programming, serverless and coding, Fred Brooks on architecture. Her dream is to one day be in the Kafka 4 Club. Welcome.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. And I'm going to mix it up. I'm not going to ask if everyone can see my slides. I'm just going to hope for the best here. So in this presentation, we're going to talk about data engineering. To give you a little bit of background, I am a data engineer. We will talk about what that means. I'm Jersey born and raised, so it is very late for me here. Apologies if I yawn. I know here's where I would typically put a picture of me, but since we can all see me, here's a picture of my nephew Brody instead, because he is a very handsome cat. So what we're going to be doing and talking about the data engineering secrets is first we'll go through my journey to become a data engineer, what the job entails, what I've learned about it, the glory or lack thereof in the job, the whys of being a data engineer, some of our secrets so you can take them and use them, and then the final slide to wrap it all up. So the journey. All data engineers tend to have very different ways we came to this job. So my journey is that out of college with my CS degree, I got my first job in data warehousing and ETL. These are not flashy technologies, but they're very stable things, very common in finance and healthcare, very well established. From there, I moved on to a job where, for whatever reason, technology was picked by our manager, seeing stuff on Hacker News and going, that seems fun. So for some reason, that was how our office picked tools like Kafka and Avro, and they needed an engineer who would be able to feel comfortable working with those. And my options were learn those or learn JavaScript. And I didn't want to learn JavaScript. So I learned those things, which put me on this trajectory to becoming a data engineer, where I finally moved into a job where I oversaw systems that had more than 2 billion messages a week coming through, terabytes of data. And now I'm here at Webflow giving this presentation to you. So what does the job entail? If you ask a data engineer what data engineering is, I think this subreddit from data engineering community really sums it up, where the question was, tell us you're a data engineer without telling us you're a data engineer. And the community voted the top answer to be, I have no idea what my job actually is, which does sum it up immensely. So if it's hard to say what a data engineer is, let me sort of show you what a data engineer does to give you an idea of what this might entail. So a day in my job might look something like this. I come in nice and early, ready for the day. Overnight, the transformer failed. Why? None of the 35 errors we expected or why it failed. So we have to figure that out. No worries. Then someone shows up to say that the numbers look wrong. I have to figure out, does that mean we're missing data? Is there a bug upstream? Is there a bug downstream? Or have we accurately reflected what are unfortunately just bad numbers today? Then it gets to about 9 o'clock. This is the point where someone tells me the iOS app has stopped sending events. It did that a couple weeks ago. No one noticed. And in looking into this, we realized the Android app, it's sending events. All of them are wrong. No one knows why this is happening or how to fix it. There isn't really a statement or call to action there. You just got to figure it out yourself. About 10:30, legal asked me to describe about 75 terabytes worth of data by the end of the day. Ironically, this will be the easiest thing I tackle in my day. Right before lunch, find out another team's going to do a very risky production deployment, because that's always fun. It might damage our data. We have a big report running the next day. I have 3 minutes to figure it out. Typical. Then when I finally get to lunch, the new manager tells me they're excited to hear about my small data platform, which makes me cry on the inside. After lunch is when the Postgres incident happens, because we all know that's when database incidents happen. My job doesn't actually involve Postgres, but as someone who spends a lot of time thinking about databases, pitch in to help. As that wraps up, finance, of course, hits me up on Slack to know why data systems are expensive. This week, it's about why moving billions of messages costs money, because last week it was about why storing terabytes of data costs money. At this point, one of the data scientists asked me to explain what a container is. This will be the hardest thing I have to do, and I will hand them off to the junior engineer who is much better qualified to explaining this than I am. At that point, my manager is unfortunately told he gets to tell me that I don't get to send metrics out for these systems because these are big systems and they are expensive to monitor. We then get in an argument. I tell him that when someone gets paged, they're not going to know what's happening. He says we're going to have to run that risk. The joke will be on him. He will get paged on in the middle of the night, and I will be asleep and not able to help him. And at that point, there's 17 minutes left in my day. So that's what being a data engineer is like. The sort of problems you face as a data engineer are not just the immediate something's on fire. It's thinking about this long-term design and maintenance of systems that will live for years. I inherited a Kafka cluster so old that the people who made Kafka couldn't believe we were still running it. I don't like that achievement. We should not have hit that. We have streaming systems now, which are exciting, but they're also overwhelming because that means lots of things are happening at once, which is a different can of worms than batch problems, because there you don't know how you messed up for several hours or possibly days. Pick your poison. There is data everywhere. It's in databases, it's in spreadsheets, it's in people's heads. None of it has a schema. All of it looks slightly different from the other, because it'd be too easy if the field state always meant either New York or active and not both of them at the same time. People also want answers, but they don't know what the questions are, and you got to figure that out, which is exciting. But the main sort of problem as a data engineer I face is these problems of negative engineering, writing defensive code, paying down tech debt, refactoring, updating, upgrading, as opposed to positive engineering, which is what we tend to think of, which is I write code for a new feature, it goes off, and it's a great time. Which leads to the glory or lack thereof in data engineering. So when no one knows what you stop from happening, no one knows what you're doing, right? So if all of your work is negative engineering, you're not shipping new features, you're not shipping new services, you don't really have updates for the rest of the company to understand, and you tell them everything's very niche and back-end, and people sort of nod, but they don't understand what you're talking about. Because you can't show people very easily, here's the incidents that didn't happen. because we made the system resilient and self-healing. Here's the data that was not lost. There was no loss of data or trust because we've been working on the tech debt and the bugs and the monitoring. People can't see how much work you removed from their plate by really thinking about how can I make this as easy as possible for engineers or scientists or analysts. When you're doing your job, you're invisible. And the moment something fails, that's when that's all anyone can see. And suddenly everyone just wants to know, what did you do and when are you going to fix it? So it might be obvious by now why a company would want a data engineer. When you have questions like, how do we get the data to answer our questions? How do we move it fast enough? How do we store it? How are we in compliance? How do we make sure the people who need it can use it? Those are the sorts of things a data engineer thinks about and can help you answer. But at the same time, why would someone become a data engineer? Because you're probably sitting at home thinking, Siobhan, you're not really selling me on this. And I get that. If what your favorite part of being an engineer is producing new features or making visible work that end users can see and use, this probably isn't for you, and that's okay. I don't know how front-end engineers like Olena do it. I would not have the patience for it, but I appreciate the apps and websites that are built. What I like though, and what you might like, is when you have these really hard problems that have no easy or obvious solution. Or when you think at massive scales of time and space, this is a system that will live for at least 5 years and how many terabytes of data it will process monthly, weekly, when you're exposed to every bit of technology and engineering. I've made an Android pull request. I've never used an Android device in my life, but I made an Android pull request. I've had to have the inner parts of Objective-C explained to me. There is no reason I should have been there, but I've gotten to work with it. Because if your favorite part of engineering is getting to help others to do their job, then maybe you'd like being a data engineer. But I promised you in this presentation, I'd give you secrets. So here are the secrets. This is going to be a crash course, some tools, some ideas that you might need or use or want to look into. That way there is no gatekeeping. No one can make you feel like you don't belong. These are the magic words to know. That way you can get involved. So when we talk about data, data is the raw representation of a thing. Information is the value extracted from data. People will often tell you that they want data, and what they really want is value from that data. A bounded data set is finite, which is what we traditionally face. Infinite sets, though, those unbounded data sets of constantly growing data, that's what we're faced with now in the world. A data warehouse is a database that's been specifically designed to hold all your data for analytical purposes. It's expensive because it does its job. If it costs $500,000 a year to run, but it lets you make at least $2 million in decisions, it's paid for itself. On the other hand, a data lake is an application that has an actual purpose. Don't worry about it. That's not entry level. You will hear lots about data lakes because vendors love selling them to people, and many data lakes go awry. So often, that has a name, a data swamp. That's not a helpful term to you to know, but I just think it's very pleasing. What is probably more of interest to you is a data vault, a place where you can keep a copy of all of your data just in case someone deletes the production database. You find a bug and you want to rerun the code. When you act on data, a batch engine is a way to process a bounded data set. A streaming engine is processing an unbounded data set. Just because one is newer does not mean it's better. They're both tools that can be used correctly for the right problem. ETL is the idea of extracting data from a source, transforming it, and then loading it to its destination. This is not a new idea. It's been around for decades. And even if you don't design your systems to reflect those steps, it's a great logical way of thinking about acting on data. Data cleansing is hecka grating to do, but it's super important. And if you want to have opinions about data, start cleansing that data. You will have opinions really fast. Data lineage tells you where your data has been and who's used it. That's great for legal and compliance reasons. It's great for debugging and for making live diagrams of what does the system look like. Data tests complement your code tests so that you know that things are right. This is not an area where the industry really has good examples of the way with code tests. We can talk about a meaningful unit test, integration tests, test-driven development. We don't really have that for data tests. So just do your best and know that that's all we can ask of you. When you talk about data systems, a change data capture system pushes the events that happen inside of a database out to other systems so they know about it. If you want a CDC, you probably want one going to an append-only log. A data pipeline allows large volumes of data to move around freely and quickly. It allows systems to come and go, either producing data or consuming data, without really needing to worry about each other. They don't have to be the same language. They don't have to share the same paradigm. If you want a data pipeline, you probably want to build one around an append-only log. If you're looking into an event-driven architecture, you might think you want a message queue or a publish-subscribe system. In reality, you probably want an append-only log. I don't know if you could tell, but I like append-only logs, which is great for you because I have a suggestion for one. Kafka. Kafka is a great append-only log that can really scale. It's written in Scala and Java, but it has lots of support for non-JVM languages. So if your backend is Node.js and Python, you'll work great. But for data engineering, JVM, especially Java and Scala, are going to be the main languages you're working with. To go with Kafka, I'd suggest the library Avro. This allows you to find schemas about your data, part of that data cleansing and understanding what your data looks like. It also works beautifully with a system called Schema Registry. As its name suggests, it lets you register schemas there so you can see what they all are. That's why answering a legal request about what terabytes of data looks like is easy. You just go tell the Schema Registry, explain everything to me, and then you send that to the lawyers in a spreadsheet, and it makes them happy. Functional programming is a paradigm that works really well with data system because it lets you compose together these very small pieces that you can test and feel really confident about, and then build them up for each use case. Scala and functional programming both get a bad rap. People tell you they're really hard to learn. The official language book for Scala does a really good job covering the basics of functional programming because a lot of people do a lot of crazy things. They get all over the place. Don't worry about that. We're looking for basic fundamentals here. And if you're looking for setting up cloud storage, use your cloud of choices storage systems. For cold storage, for that data vault, for the warehouse, just use what your cloud offers. So if you're in AWS, for example, put your data vault in S3 and Glacier. And if you want a warehouse, put it in Redshift. There's vendors selling other products, but your cloud of choices options, those are going to be super easy and they're actually going to work really well. So to wrap this all up, this is my website and email if you ever need me. If you're a data engineer and you need someone to talk to, or if you're just having an absolutely terrible day and you want to talk to somebody, that's my email. So long as you spell my name right, you hit me up. Being a data engineer can be an extremely thankless job, but it's still an incredible feeling to get to help others and see what they can do because you were there to support them, right? In the chart Jay-Z showed, I work in the infrastructure pillar. I'm way at the bottom and I love that. So even if you don't want to be a data engineer, use our tools and secrets, but also if you work with data engineers, maybe be kind to them. They're probably having a rough day and would appreciate it. And again, even if you don't want to be a data engineer, something like Kafka, that's a massive ecosystem. It has lots of great community support, lots of great tools and articles. Maybe it'll give you an idea for something you can do, just another tool in your toolbox for how to solve the problems you are working on. Functional programming and Scala, like I said, people give them a bad rap. They're not that hard. And as a data engineer, they're going to be your friends. And even if you don't need to move terabytes of data or millions or billions of messages a week, you probably still work with data. So maybe figuring out what it is data engineers would suggest might make your job easier. And because I had a manager who believed all presentations should end with a call to action, my call to action is to tweet my sister that Birdie is a handsome cat. Don't worry about her. She's in the chat, so she knows I'm doing this. And that is my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Siobhan, for that excellent talk on data engineering and for hanging out with us from the East Coast. So our last speaker is Katie. And if you have any questions at all, please do add them to the Q&A in Zoom or ask it in the chat. And Arquay will be asking these questions to our speakers after Katie's talk. So I'll do a quick intro to Katie. She is a software engineer on the collaboration team at Webflow, and she co-leads the Asians at Webflow Affinity Group. And previously, she founded and ran a tech meetup in Portland focused on career development for people who are new to tech. And she's passionate about helping people from underrepresented backgrounds get involved in tech and creating safe spaces for them to feel welcome. So welcome, Katie.
Hello. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So hello, hi everyone. My name is Katie Fujihara. Today we'll be giving a talk on how to be your biggest fan, a guide on how to self-advocate. So just a little TLDR of who I am. Yes, I'm Katie, said that already. I come from a non-traditional background, majored in marketing and Japanese. Never thought I'd be a software engineer. In 2018, I attended a coding bootcamp and co-founded and ran a local tech meetup in Portland called Future Leaders in Tech. And in 2019, I joined Webflow as an apprentice software engineer. And currently I am a software engineer too, still at Webflow. And that's my baby dog, Yochi, who is quarantined right now, so he doesn't bark while I'm giving this talk. So just a little quick agenda breakdown, what we're going to be talking about today. It should be a fairly short presentation. First up will be glue work versus glamour work and how that relates to unconscious bias. Next will be personal concerns and challenges when it comes to promotions. And the last bit will be the meat of the presentation, which is tips on how to advocate for yourself. So first off, let's go over glue work versus glamour work. You'll notice that on the slides in the bottom corner, some of them will have these QR codes. If any of these particular topics interest you, feel free to hold your phone up or your camera up to the QR code and scan that. It'll take you directly to the source of where I got all of this information from. So first off, what is glue work? According to Tanya Riley, glue work is the less glamorous and often less promotable work that needs to happen to make a company successful. So examples of glue work can include writing docs, setting up team meetings, improving team process, establishing coding standards, mentoring and coaching, improving new member onboarding. Hold on, sorry. So what is glamour work? So examples of glamour work, on the other hand, are, but it sounds like more glamorous, writing code and shipping features. So as software engineers, this type of work is often valued more than glue work because it signals technical competency. A poor manager may determine promotions and rewards based off of the false equivalence that more code written automatically means a stronger, more impactful engineer, which we know is not always the case. So next, I'm going to be going over a bit of the importance of glue work versus glamour work. A national study conducted by the Center for Work-Life Law and the Society of Women Engineers surveyed over 3,000 engineers. It showed that women were 29% more likely than white men to report doing more office housework, and for the sake of this talk, we'll call it glue work, than their colleagues. Prescriptive stereotypes show that women of color are under the most social pressure to volunteer for glue work. And the unequal distribution of glue work and glamour work between women and men is evident when you see that men are more likely to be promoted to executive positions. This is an indicator of how much more impact glamour work has when it comes to promotions. So just a little bit about my experience with all of this. I've been at Webflow for 2 years now, and in that time I've gotten 2 promotions, but I've also cycled through 4 different managers in that time. And I've also found myself doing quite a bit of glue work and was nervous about it being invisible. As many of you who have worked in the startup world know, organizational change and uncertainty is common among early stage startups and startups going through hypergrowth. Therefore, it is important to learn how to navigate these spaces and to track your own personal growth. So during all of this uncertainty and changes and not wanting my career to get stunted, I had these 4 major questions on my mind. How do I ensure my career does not stagnate? How do I ensure that my new manager understands my impact? How do I make the glue work I do visible? And how do I ensure organizational changes do not affect my promotion timeline? So my solution, pretty simple. Make all the work I do, glue work included, as visible as possible and to advocate for myself. So Next up, the meat of this presentation, tips on how to advocate for yourself, or tips that I find helped me in getting promoted. So just a quick reminder, you can have good peers and a good manager, but at the end of the day, you need to be your biggest advocate, your biggest fan. So my first little tip would be to track your progress and wins. Seems pretty obvious, but it needs to be stated. So I would recommend creating a progress document that you update on a regular cadence, whether that's monthly, bi-weekly, whatever it takes for you to remember to do it, that's the cadence for you. If you know what is required to get to the next level, organize your progress doc in a way that highlights how you are satisfying these requirements. Link to PRs, Slack conversations, code reviews, screenshots of public or private praise, anything that can serve as evidence of your impact. And lastly, share this doc with your managers. If you move managers, bring this doc with you and show it to your new one. That way they can have all the context of work that you've done. So I have 2 examples below of kind of how you could structure your progress doc. For example, 1, I have it broken down in 6-month increments. So January to June, July to December. And I'll usually put bullet points of the things that I've done, the contributions. And I'll also link or take screenshots of Slack conversations, PRs, things that serve as evidence that support the contributions that are the things that I'm saying I contributed to in the progress doc. For example, 2, this is if it's structured by knowing the requirements to get promoted already. So say the requirements are must write documentation, must write unit tests, and provides thoughtful feedback and code reviews. The way I would organize my progress doc would be to have each of these requirements as the headers of each section, and then put the contributions underneath each section that support this. That way you have all of the proof you need to show that you're operating at that next level. Another tip is to not lose promotion traction during manager handoffs. So if you 1, know you are close to being promoted, and 2, know you will be changing managers soon, push for your current manager to start the promotion process because there are so many unknowns when getting a new manager. I actually had to do this when I was going from apprentice software engineer to junior software engineer because I found out I was getting a new manager, and usually the amount of time they want you to be an apprentice is 6 months, but I was at about my 4th month and I was worried that when I switched managers, my new manager wouldn't have all the context that my current manager did. So I really, really pushed for him to start that, and luckily he did. So I was able to transition before I got that new manager. And the reason you want to do this is because your new manager will not have as much context as your current manager. They may not be as helpful when it comes to advocating for you, and they may be preoccupied with other things as they are onboarding. So consider that your new manager might be onboarding to your team or onboarding to your company. They have a lot on their plate. I don't know if any of you are managers, but I've heard if you're a manager, you have just a ton of things to do that most people don't ever see. So it's, as a report, just do your due diligence to get those things started and to advocate for yourself, because who knows, your promotion might be the bottom of their priority list at this time. So start it before, if you can. And another piece of advice would be to push for one-on-ones during manager handoffs. So as Lara Hogan states, your new manager might not be familiar with all that you've done already, which could slow your career momentum. So what exactly are one-on-ones? It's when you, your current manager, and your new manager all sit down and go over your previous work strengths and areas for improvement. It's a time for everyone to get aligned on your goals. So this is a good time for everyone to get context around everything and your new manager to understand exactly your impact. I found these really helpful in the past. And last but definitely not least, make your work as visible as possible. Be as loud as you can about wins. Be transparent about what you're working on. This could be through updating your Slack status. It could be like, oh, I'm working on a bug fix, or something along those lines, just so people know what you're doing. Be transparent in stand-ups. Just make sure everyone knows what you're working on. Don't undersell anything that you're doing, and ask questions and be open about any blockers that you're facing. You don't need to suffer in silence if you are stuck on something. Find quantitative ways to measure the impact of your work on a business level. So talk to your product managers or talk to your engineering managers about how what you worked on is performing, so you can get those hard numbers that you can use to your advantage when it's time for a promotion. And lastly, talk to teammates and mentors about your progress. The more they know about your work, the more they can help advocate for you when the time comes for a promotion. So just a little quick summary. I told you this talk was going to be quite short. You have to be your biggest advocate, track your progress and wins in a progress doc, try to kick off a promotion process before a manager handoff if you're able to, push for those one-on-one-on-ones, and make your work as visible as possible. Thank you. Twitter is Katie Fujihara if you want to keep in touch, or LinkedIn, whatever works for you. But that is all I have for you today. Thanks for listening.
So once everyone joins, I'm going to lead into some Q&A. We did actually have a question come through, and since it's a question that could apply to all of us, like maybe I'll just sort of facilitate for a couple of us to answer it. So I'll start with you, Jay-Z. The question is, how did each speaker find their way to their current role at Webflow? The tactical stories help understand if everyone applied, got recruited, how they got to do something new, i.e. if their resume didn't show the same job title. So effectively, like, what was your journey to Webflow?
Sure, happy to get started. I joined Webflow at this point about 1.5 years ago. I joined Webflow actually coming from WeWork. And so WeWork was definitely a very interesting journey. I joined after I left 4 years of Airbnb, and what was really attractive about it was to be able to start kind of the tech organization from scratch in a place that didn't exist. That company did go through a lot that was very unexpected. And so after hypergrowth for 6 months, I was really thinking about restructuring the team in the latter 6. And so when I was leaving WeWork, I really thought about what I wanted to do next. And I actually had the time to think about it because I was pre-planning and working with my team to make sure it was landing in a really good place. And I knew that I wasn't going to be staying with the team long term. And I thought about smaller companies, I thought about larger companies. And what really drew me to Webflow was a couple of things. One, I think personally for me, when I had the opportunity to lead all of product, it was a very different experience than what I'd done before, which was large organizations, but not necessarily the entirety of the product team. And there's something that I was really excited about to do that at Webflow. The other thing is why Webflow? There are other companies out there, but I think it's so rare to find, these two things. The first one is a mission and a product that just gets me fired up every single day. We talked about this before, which is, getting to help the world be able to create, right? Like something that is in 1% of the world today, which is like right access to the web, being able to democratize that and make sure that everyone has access to it. I think that's something that a lot of us here it really resonates with. And I talked about this earlier where I'm not technical. I mean, that wasn't my background, and being able to build a tool where that everyone can create, regardless of their, do you have a CS degree? Do you have a coding background? That's just something that really draws me. And the other piece is the people. I truly think that I'll say this as a product leader, the product leader and the CEO needs to have a very, very strong relationship. And I can't think of another person who is both a combination of like the best chief vision officer and the kindest human. Like that combination is just so rare, and finding both of those things in Vlad is something that was really appealing. I again, talked to a lot of different founders, and it's a really like a 1 in a million opportunity to get to work with Vlad to bring that vision to life. And then the team here is just so kind. Our mission statement is not just, this is the thing we want to accomplish, but these are the things that we want to accomplish with the people here together. And so again, that is just very rare. And so that's how I made my way to Webflow. Great.
Although, Jay-Z, it's a little bit hurtful because I thought you told me that the most important relationship is between the VP of product and VP of Eng. I don't know. This is like a lot.
You weren't there when I joined.
Hurtful.
Now Vlad has been replaced by Arquay.
It rings hollow. I don't know. But I'm actually going to go second because it's a good segue into why I joined the company, which is definitely the people. So every single person that I talk to, like Vlad is maybe the nicest human ever. He's, there's everybody read the Steve Jobs book. So you get these kind of megalomaniac CEOs or founders of companies, and it's a little bit scary out there. And he's definitely nothing like that, has a really great vision. And then every single person that I met Brian, I met some of the other people at the company. And then honestly, it's Jay-Z, right? One of the things that really struck me, especially considering this demographic, this Girl Geek dinner is I've literally racked my brain, and in over 20 years of experience, I cannot think of another company where both the VP of product and the VP of Eng are women of color. Literally, if someone in chat can give me another example, I literally like thought about it. And, you know, we are not diversity hires or something like that. We are just women who are out in the world doing our jobs. But that is something interesting that you don't see every day. And I think it's just Jay-Z's vision and the way she could articulate not just what we're doing today, but what we're doing in the future, and how she also values that partnership between, you know, product and eng and design. And then just generally every person, I'm coming in, I've only been at Webflow about 6 months. And I'm coming in, you know, kind of doing this operational excellence stuff, and no one is licking all the cookies, being like, no, this is the way we do it. They're like, great, that sounds awesome. You have a great idea. Let's try it. You know, everyone's amenable to change, and they know that we're here and we're gonna have to do different things to get us to a different point. And it's just a really like amazing place to be. So, you know, speaking of that, like maybe we transition to Olena. I'm curious about you because it's very, very late for you. So I'll let you go and see what your answer is.
Yeah, I joined Webflow 4.5 years ago when it was like a company of 40 people. And for me, it was a company where I was able to solve very difficult challenges while still being on the front end part of the application. It was very rare for me. And also all people that I met through my interview process were just awesome. And at the first retreat, I just understood that these people are my people because they were so kind, so human, so humble, at the same time, so smart and so visionary, focused on our mission. It was just awesome.
I'm on mute, but what about you, Katie?
So I came to Webflow, 2.5 years ago, actually, through Vlad found me on Twitter. But I think that when I first joined Webflow, I was in a point of my career where I didn't have a tech career yet. Like I was looking for my first role, and it was at that point where I was just looking for someone to take a chance on me. I know a lot of people who are juniors in their engineering career can this resonates with you, where you just want someone to believe that you can do it, because you know you can do it. It's just you need to sell yourself. And luckily for me, I was given that opportunity at Webflow, and you know, like everyone else was saying, what really sold me on the company was meeting the people and just like going through the interview process and being introduced to all of the engineers. I've always been kind of intimidated by what people consider like the engineering type or the stereotype of engineers, but everyone I worked with in the interview process was not that stereotype, and it was just really fun. And I could tell that they really value the personality of people here on top of their technical skill and everything like that. They just want people who can work with other people well. And for me, that was really attractive. So, and 2.5 years later, here I am. So yay.
Yay. And then Siobhan, I'm really hoping there's going to be a Brody cameo at some point. Your sister's on there, I saw.
Oh, she is. Oh, remind me tomorrow. I have so many pictures of Brody I've stolen from her. I have a whole album. I joined Webflow earlier this year. Essentially, how I came to here was my previous job I'd been at for a couple of years. We'd finished a couple big projects. My junior engineer that I had been training, I knew she was fine, that she could take this on her own. And I felt like my chapter there had come to its natural conclusion of everything was sort of in a better place. And the day I realized maybe it's time to look for something else, it ended up that a recruiter I had worked with there now works at Webflow, and she had reached out a couple days earlier. And it felt like the universe was like, hey, Siobhan, here's the next thing. Because as everyone said, it was really the people. When I think back on my favorite projects, technically I've worked on, those teams, it was awful. Whereas my favorite teams I've worked on, those have been some of the hardest projects technically, but we were all in it together because it was the right people trying to do the right thing. So that's what really drew me to Webflow, was feeling like, yes, we're going to come in and we're going to make a change and we're going to do the best we can. And we're going to do it together. And that's what really drew me in. Plus now we have a cats channel and I can show people pictures of Brody all the time and they love it because I also love him.
That's a great answer. We have an answer that came in through the Q&A, and it is, what's the best advice someone gave you early on in your career in software development engineering? How about you, Katie?
Okay, so actually, I will say that not necessarily a piece of advice, but something that Olena did actually, because I worked with Olena before on a feature, and one thing that she taught me is that even if you're a staff or senior level engineer, you have so much you can learn from junior engineers, and that has stuck with me since. I remember she would vocalize also when I would teach her something that she liked, or she didn't know about or something. She would always just like be so open and humble in saying that to me, and it helped reinforce my confidence that even though I don't have like years upon years of experience like her, she still can take away something from me, and that I have knowledge that is valuable to other people. So that's what I would say.
That's very sweet. I won't make every single person answer it, but I'm curious about you, Jay-Z. I know that you've had a very long and kind of storied career. What was some early advice that you got?
Yeah, so I can't exactly answer what advice I get in software engineering, since that's not my background, but the two pieces of advice that really have just stuck with me in my career, and there's one that was early career and then was one that's later career. I'll share both. The early career one was optimize for learning. So that's the piece of advice I'd gotten and really resonated with me, and something that guided my career for the first 5-6 years, where when I joined Pocket Gems, which is the mobile gaming company, I was like, I don't know what a PM is. I'm here to do it. When I joined Dropbox, I actually worked on the most technical product I could find, because I had that imposter syndrome about working in technology. So I joined the Dropbox developer platform team, and I was like, what is an API? I'm here to learn. When I joined Airbnb, I'd worked at engineering driven companies. I'd worked at almost like business product driven companies, but I never worked at design driven company. And so when I joined, I really wanted to learn what it would mean to build from first principles and design thinking. And again, so that's really something that guided me early career. And then later in my career, a piece of advice that's really stuck with me that might seem unintuitive is ask for help. And I think that when you get further and further in your career, it's almost harder to feel like you can ask for help. And I think especially in the industry that you work in, that we all work in, it's like, oh, if I ask for help, are people going to think I'm not competent? Or they think I'm like, they think I look 20? Are they going to think there's just like a whole thing where if you ask for help, is that going to be looked down upon? And actually the advice I'd gotten from a mentor was, no, do it. Like, ask for help, because you should always feel like you're failing. If you're learning and you're growing, you're pushing on that impact. Like, there are always days where you're like, man, that did not go the way I wanted it to go. Like, you should be in some ways failing and learning from that. And in order to do it in a way where, because the more senior you are, you're responsible for a lot of people and for the impact on the company. And if you do not ask for help clearly and often, it's just not human to be able to take it on your shoulders all the time. So ask for help is something that I think about every single day, something I push myself to do every single day.
Oh, that's so good. I mean, this reminds me of a similar question that people ask, like, what is the advice you give to your younger self? And for me, there is an extra pressure, like, to piggyback on what Jay-Z just said, where there's this famous XKCD comic where the first pane is like, oh, Bob doesn't understand math. And the second one is like, women don't understand math. Where for me, it's like, if I admit that I don't know something, it's like, see, I told you Black women can't do SQL. And it's just like this. And so I would rather like buy a book on Java beans than ask for help. And I would have wished I would not done. I wish I would have not have done that, because I could have gone farther faster, right? Had I had that support system. So we have another question in chat, and I'm going to start with you, Siobhan. And the question is, what advice would you give to someone who has no technical background that's starting this from scratch in a boot camp?
Oh, that's an interesting one. I like that. I think oftentimes engineers, whether intentionally or not, do a lot of gatekeeping, especially in a company where engineers are asked to talk with non-engineers. We're not taught to think about, how do we communicate that? How do we make sure we're using language that everyone understands? We're bringing everyone along. One of the things I've really learned as a data engineer and I've really loved is getting to work with non-engineers and having to explain technical things to them. It is very hard to explain what is a Docker container to someone who's not an engineer. But when you practice that, that's really important. So I think oftentimes when you come from a non-technical background and suddenly you're faced with engineers throwing these words around, you think, I'm the problem. It's important to remember from a cultural perspective, no, this is something where everyone should feel involved. You should feel comfortable saying, I don't understand. Can you explain that to me? Can you explain that in a less technical manner? That way we are bringing everyone along. And sometimes engineers will say, well, I understand, so why don't you? The point is, if we're all on the same page, we're all going to do better together, right? High tide raises all boats. So I think especially if you're coming from a non-technical background, I've done a lot of interviews, and let me tell you, the non-technical people or people who switch careers, they're always my favorite because they think about things so differently. And that different perspective is so valuable. They're thinking about, how do I explain this to non-technical people? How do I approach the problem differently? So as much as many people will tell you this is a weakness, it's not. It really gives you a different insight. And I think it will make you just a better person to work with all around.
Totally agree. I'm curious about you, Olena, and then I feel like we should go to Katie as well after that, who actually lived through this experience.
I would double on like advice about education. Like there are so many teachers out there, especially with everything available now online. So if you have a teacher at your boot camps that can't explain you something, just look for another teacher on YouTube, because there are so many approaches how to teach others. And some approach might work for you better, and some approach might work for other people's better. So if you don't understand something, this is not your problem or your limitations. This is just the way someone tried to educate you and it doesn't work for you. But there are so many other ways how you can be educated and learn about something. Maybe your way is to learn through examples, maybe by watching videos, maybe by creating talks. Who knows? Just explore how best you can learn what you want to learn.
Oh yeah, Katie, go for it, if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. So I think something that is really important when you're coming from a non-technical, completely unrelated background, doing a boot camp. The thing that people often don't tell you while you're in the boot camp is how difficult it is once you're out of the boot camp to get a job and to get noticed. So what I would recommend is to find a way to differentiate yourself early on, figure out what you like, really double down on your strengths and your weaknesses, like figure out what those are early on and just like really lean into your strengths. I know for me personally, like one of my strengths is I'm very community driven. And so, while I might not be the most technically, savvy person, or I definitely don't consider myself that, I lean into the participating and building communities. So that for me, that meant attending lots of conferences and networking at them, or speaking at conferences or speaking at meetups, just getting myself out there so that I could network with people. Also, another way, if in-person type of things isn't your jam, I've noticed that people were very excited when they found out that I contributed to open source projects. So like that shows that you're engaged with like the open source community, and you can also have proof of your technical skills by like linking to PRs. It's just there's evidence. And so it's very easy to just point things like, oh, I'm active in here and this is my work. I found that this was a lot more useful than working on side projects that were never finished or anything like that. This one, you just pick and choose what things you want to learn about in open source projects. Maybe it's, oh, I want to learn more about CSS. So you take only those types of issues, and then you get to go through the code review process with maintainers. And so then you get to learn about that. So that would be my recommendation. Contribute to open source and join your communities.
Oh, I love all of these answers. And Katie, especially, I remember years and years ago, people used to say like, oh, I want to get into coding. Like, what should I do? And I would always say code. Even if you make a website for your mom's canasta club, just do it. Like just start doing stuff. And so I just like, I love your attitude. And the other thing that I wanted to comment on was when Siobhan said that, that the people who are kind of career changers are her favorite. I have had that experience as well, where they're like, if you have a CS degree and you go to college, and let's say you learn something like data types, you might learn it over a quarter semester, you have like group projects in there, like a lot of filler, right? If you go to a boot camp and for 24 hours, like, 20 hours a day for 2 weeks, you learn data types, you'd be pretty good at them, right? Like there's this like practical thing. And so for me, I always like it takes all types, right? Like there's many different roads traveled. And I think that this very much feeds into the next question that we have, which is what advice, there was a question and it was deleted, but I remember what the question was. It was Jay-Z had talked about imposter syndrome. Have any of you ever, has anyone else ever experienced that? And what are some ways that you tackled it? So how about we start with, how about you, Siobhan? And then Jay-Z, I think, if you have anything more to add.
Yeah, so I actually started studying computer science when I was 14. My high school had classes. The way I got into it was when I was 13, my mother made a passing comment of, oh, you're always on the computer. Maybe you should go to the computer science academy. I was like, well, yeah, maybe I will. In that way teenagers have. So that's how I got into computer science. And at that point, I don't even think we had internet at home. My sister can correct me if I'm wrong. Like we didn't have internet at home. Internet was something at the library. It'd probably be like 10 years until I'd hear the phrase imposter syndrome. But I remember that was the first time I encountered this idea that because I was a girl, I wasn't supposed to be good at math or like computers. I remember when other middle schoolers found out I was going into the program, they were like, well, why are you in it? And I was like, you're just mad because you're not as good at algebra as I am. Study harder. But I remember getting to the classroom and there was 3 girls in the class, which in retrospect is 3 more than probably most people expected. But I remember sitting at my terminal one day because all the boys were having a great time goofing off, being friends. And I felt so alone, crying to myself, thinking, either I can quit or I'm going to see this through. And I look back at that now, and that was probably the closest I came of I was exposed to that at a very precious age, where 14 is a very hard age to do that. But it was in a controlled environment. And I had a mother who supported me, and I had teachers who were women and supported me. So I was able to make it through. So by the time I got into college and then into my first jobs, it was absolutely normal that I was the only woman. And at that point, it was what it was. And when people say, don't you feel like you don't belong? It's like, that feels like a you problem. I know I belong, and I don't need to prove that to anybody. So that was a very unique experience for me, but really having that moment of saying, either I'm going to quit or I'm going to keep going. And I loved it too much to quit.
That is great. So I think this will be our final answer before we head into the networking sessions. So Jay-Z, take us home. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I'll share my thoughts, but I actually think, Arquay, you should take us home because I'm really curious also on your thoughts on imposter syndrome. But I'll share mine. Yes, 100%. Definitely something that I've struggled with. I still struggle with. I think that the first piece is, so product has been a discipline that I think has taken lots of different twists and turns, and it really was rooted more in marketing. And I think the modern day product management role, a lot of people actually harken it back to Google's APM program, right? So like they had again, they had program managers at Microsoft, so on and so forth, but Google was really where it was like, you have to have a computer science degree, and then being a PM is awesome. You get to be part of this club, and you get to make decisions. But the thing is, it was such a closed door kind of environment where it's you really did have to have a computer science degree to even be interviewed for Google. And so one of the things that I thought was really important and a turning point for product as a discipline is no, actually recognizing that, by bringing in perspectives of like other perspectives that aren't just the computer science one. And in fact, your role is to really understand the user. Like, do you need to be technical to understand the user? No. In fact, the more you're the user, the more that you project yourself onto the user, the worse products you're going to build, right? And so I think that like moving away from that, like you have to have that degree in order to get an interview, into actually the role is really to understand people, and that requires like empathy, that requires curiosity. It does not require a coding background, and that's, I think, really where things are changing and have changed. And so I think part of my personal journey with imposter syndrome, especially in the product management role, is really understanding better what is the role of product management. And it's actually a very different role than the role of an engineer, for example. So I think that is a big piece. But Arquay, I'm really curious on your,
Yeah, I mean, definitely have struggled with imposter syndrome my whole career. And I was thinking recently, there was this article and it talked about how if you track historically over time, women's participation in computer science, it was mostly female dominated. You had like the Hidden Figures, they were literally called computers, Bletchy Circle, like all this stuff. And then at a certain point, there was a huge drop off. And what people have attributed it to is the 80s, like, because you got into this like Revenge of the Nerds or like weird science, and like computer science is for boys and nerds and white dudes. And that sort of thing got into the culture. And women began to think that like, they don't belong here. This is not for us. Math is hard, like all of these things, right? And so for me, yeah, I definitely struggled with like, oh, do I fit? Am I? And you add the race and the gender, like all the things, right? And so at a certain point, I really just like stopped comparing myself. I have this whole like, this when I'm talking to my friends or whatever, this kind of joke how like I never compare myself to like other women, for example. I'm like, oh yeah, she looks great in that dress, but I bet she's terrible at CSS specificity or whatever, right? Like you can't compare yourself. Like it doesn't work like that. There's no like apples to apples kind of thing. Like you really need to think about what makes you special, whether it's like whatever dress you're wearing or how good you are at JavaScript or whatever. And thinking about like knowledge as a circle. Right, like no one knows everything in the circle. Like what part of it, do you specialize in? And I think we do in culture, you're sort of ingrained in people to focus more on your weaknesses than your strengths, right? Like if there's a thing that you struggle with, I bet there's something that you're really great at, and we all have value. The thing that I think is also interesting is like we were all hired. There was all some spark that people saw in us. There's some potential that we have. And it's up to us whether or not we live up to that potential and we lean into it, or we let others define who we are and how we behave. So on that note, this has been super great. I'm not exactly sure what happens, but somehow magically we're going to go into breakout sessions. Oh, there's Angie. Oh, save us.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to be wrapping up. And I want to say that Webflow is hiring. We're going to be sending out an email afterwards to ask about how this event went, and then we'll have some links to the jobs there. So check those out. If not, just go to their website and look at the jobs there as well. They're hiring for engineers, engineering managers, product managers, design managers. There's a ton of jobs. Tell your friends this is an awesome place to work. You've met some amazing women who work there, and yeah, spread the word. So in the chat, there is a link to the Zoom meeting where we'll be doing the breakout sessions. If you want to join us, I know it's getting late. Please do join us by clicking on that link. It's also available in an email that will be sent, that's already been sent to all attendees. There's a link to the Zoom meeting. And thanks so much to everyone for speaking, and we'll see you on the Zoom meeting if you want to have another 20 minutes of meeting each other face to face. All right, see you on the other side.